Windows. What is the best Windows version? And really, this one is kind of a hard video to make because this version's coming end of life in 2020. And I'm not talking about Windows 7. So really what I wanted to do in this video is showcase my absolute favorite version of Windows. And as you know, it's not Windows 10. I've made a bunch of videos about how I don't like Windows 10, how to debloat it, how to remove a lot of the features they've added to it. And Windows 7 is honestly an abomination in 2019 of what it looks like. And in 2020, it's even worse. It's had patches and telemetry and a whole bunch of just shenanigans added to Windows 7, so I don't like it anymore either. Back in its golden years in 2009, 2010, Windows 7 was very good, but today's Windows 7 is a different beast. And please don't be one of those people that say, I'm not going to patch Windows 7 and just use an old version, because the NSA tool leak in 2017 is extremely bad. You can get ransomware, viruses, so you need to be running a patched system. Now, obviously, I'm talking about security patches. And if you're using Windows 10, I always recommend push back those feature updates as long as you can, but still be running your security updates. But this video, we're going to go over Server 2008 R2, my favorite version of Windows by far. And honestly, even today, even in 2020, I'm still going to be running this because I absolutely love it. And honestly, most businesses, since it's going end of life, that don't want to pay for extended support are moving away from it. So I have a whole bunch of licenses for 2008 R2. Now, I'm not selling those licenses or anything like that. I don't believe in reselling software keys. So if you want to go and approach this, there is aftermarket CD key websites you can go, but I don't recommend any of them. And that is mainly because a lot of CD key websites, it's hit and miss. And I say, hey, you can get these keys probably dirt cheap now that you can still activate Windows because most businesses won't be installing or using Server 2008 R2 anymore. So if you're a Windows 7 lover, you want to try something new, go ahead and install it. Try it. It's still supported for, I think, till February 2020, and then they're ceasing updates. But there's some really cool features, and it's really lightweight. Even today, it is a patched version of Windows 7 from its glory years. So we're going to install Server 2008 R2, install desktop experience, make it look and feel like Windows 7 was back in 2009 or 2010. This video is brought to you by CDN77, the content delivery network used by space agencies and CentOS. I also am using this on ChrisTitus.com to speed up my website, so if you're interested in this, click the link in the description. So we have our little setup here. We're going to boot and start loading this guy up. So right here's our SanDisk that we'll boot from. And since this is an older BIOS, we'll just go into the boot override and do it from here. Now, if we choose SanDisk like this, it'll be a traditional legacy boot. If we do it from here, it'll be UEFI. So since this is an older install, Windows 7 wasn't great with UEFI, and Server 2008 R2 is in the same vein. So I'm going to go with a legacy boot. All right, and then we have our setup here for Windows Server 2008. We'll go ahead and hit next and install now. Now you can choose whatever key you get, probably going to be just standard. I don't recommend doing core, as that doesn't give you a graphic user interface and defeats the purpose of this video. So we're just going to choose that first one, standard, as this is a multi-boot Server 2008 I've created. So from here, we'll just accept the terms, custom install, and we're going to wipe out our existing partitions, as I had Windows 10 on this machine. But we're going to switch over to Server 2008. Alright, we did our first reboot after the initial install, so it's preparing it for first use, much like Windows 7 does. Alright, here we go. We're finally to our startup screen. That takes a little bit on server, and much like Windows 7 as well. Honestly, these days, the install takes about 30 minutes, so it's a bit longer than Windows 10, just because of the age of the operating system. So here is our brand new Windows 7. First thing I'm going to do, well, actually, Server 2008 is basically activate Windows, kind of go through this checklist, and I'm going to just do that real fast and just get that done. But activating Windows, setting my time zone, all these things are important. And then I'm going to show you how to basically take off all the server components, which I've done in a past video, but I'm going to just go really quick here. So if you want to see this in more slowed down format, check out my server gaming video I've done. Now, that was on Server 2016. Since this is Server 2008 R2, it's a little different, so I'll slow down on the parts that are older, that no longer apply to some of the newer versions of Server. All right, so I'm having issues activating, but if we look into our device manager, we'll probably see the problem here. So let's go into our device manager. So we'll go into here, and you'll see we are missing quite a bit of drivers. This is okay, because we can use Snappy Driver Install Tool. It's an open source driver installer that is just fantastic. I've actually already updated and downloaded this. This tool roughly runs about 19 gigs, but you'll see here shortly, it does install literally everything. So we can just go select all and install. And this will go through and install every single component in the computer. So it's really awesome. So I clicked install here. It should grab all my drivers that I have going. And from there, it should install them all. So we'll see what happens here. There's a display driver, a whole bunch of stuff, you know. And this is just so fantastic because it'll grab every single connection and get it installed. As I say that, it fails on the network driver. I love it. Now, I had issues with this actual connection driver before. This chipset's just kind of a really oddball chipset. I actually can probably get this working. When it comes to server, that I-211 gigabit network connection is just a little bit weird on the install. So I actually manually select the closest driver to it, which is I think a 210, and it works just fine. But I'll probably just manually install that one. But other than this, I mean, I doubt anybody will run into a problem. It's extremely rare. I actually run into a failed install using Snappy Driver Installer, but occasionally it does happen, and on those you actually manually select the driver. But again, it's so rare. You can actually see we have internet access already after getting that installed. So while that's installing in the back, let's flip over here and activate Windows now and see if it can't grab it now. All right, look at that. Activation was successful. So we got now a fully functional version of Server 2008 R2 activated and installed on this machine, and we can proceed. So I'm going to let the display driver update, all this stuff. Very important. It's not exactly the most powerful machine, it being an i5 Gen 4 with I think only 8 gigs of RAM. And we can actually look at that. Just go into our computer and hit properties, and we should see that, yeah, it's an 8 gig i5. So not great, but not bad either. I think this will actually work really good for our needs. And honestly, if you're a Windows 7 user, I want to kind of look before we actually add too much, just to kind of showcase the differences between Windows 7 and Server 2000 R2. So Windows 7 fully patched and installed is about 40 gigs in size. And as you see right here, this right now is literally more than half of an installed Windows 7. That's why I was like, if you're a really big advocate of Windows 7, you want to switch to 2008 R2 because one, it's still maintained and supported, so you get security updates. It's a lot cleaner, it's a lot faster, and it does all the same things Windows 7 does, plus a whole bunch more. So that's why I love Server 2008 R2 even today, and why I say if you're a Windows Server or actual Windows 7 advocate and you want to continue using a Windows 7 in 2020, go ahead and drop it. See if you can't get an aftermarket 2008 R2 license for server, and then mod it out like I'm doing in this video. Couple tweaks that I will make while I'm in here is I will disable indexing, as I don't like the indexing service from Windows, as it does take away from performance on occasion. So I like to do this every once in a while and just come in here, disable this. Now you can disable the indexing service altogether, but just kind of marking everything as not indexed on the drive, I kind of like to do because that should the index service get re-enabled, it doesn't take up much horsepower because it's just literally telling every file on this system saying, hey, don't index me. So this is probably a little overkill for some folks, but for me, I like it. It gives me peace of mind. And now you just see it kind of going through. The orange just says we need to do a restart. So it's going to be really cool. Once we get done with this, we can just simply restart our computer and you'll see a lot of those drivers just disappear. So you only have one, I think, that's failed to install, and we'll go back in and manually select that driver. Should it not be recognized, sometimes if it fails and you reboot, one of the chipset drivers actually gets it anyways. But in this regard, we'll go ahead and get all our device drivers cleaned up. As the first thing I like to do when I get in here is 1, clear out all the devices that aren't installed, and then 2, activate Windows, get it functional, and then 3rd, do updates, as updates is very vital and you have to have them. So the people that say, hey, I'm just going to be on Windows 7 and disable updates, God, they're just such huge targets of ransomware and a whole bunch of other things on the net, whether it's viruses and ransomware. Just all of that is just why I say you have to patch Windows, at least security update patches. If you're on Windows 10, I say, hey, security update patches, but Windows 7, you got to be up to date. I mean, with the NSA tool leak in 2017, Windows 7 is probably the most insecure operating system or unsecure operating system on the market. It's one of the easiest ones to hack, and why I'm like, hey, if you're going to do this, Server 2008 is probably where it's at because you get all the same look and feel. It's lighter, it's cleaner, it runs faster, everything's just better. So let's go ahead and reboot. It looks like all our device drivers are now installed. It's still doing that, so we go ahead and hit OK to that. All right, so we still have 2 drivers we'll have to track down, but not too bad on the first way around. Let's go ahead, close this guy out, and then we're just going to give it an old restart here. All right, there we go. And we're going to have to take off like Control-Delete and some other stuff on here, which we can do. All right, as we see, the resolution looks a little better. So we have that. So we'll set our time zone. We'll just go through these, and then I'm going to disable this once it's all done. Central time and internet time. We're going to change these settings. I like to always change this to ntp.org or nsi.gov. It's just a little bit more reliable than time.windows. And we'll hit OK. So time's done. Configure networking. Right now it's on DHCP. We probably want to change this to static, but you probably don't, so I'm going to leave this off. Name your computer if you want. Enable automatic. We're going to go manually configure. Change automatic updating. Obviously, this is one of the things most people love about Windows 7. I always just say, hey, check for updates, but let me choose to download and install them. Allow users to updates on this computer. Okay. Error reporting. We'll go change. I don't want to participate. Don't ask me again. And again, customer experience program. Don't want to participate. You actually get more access to this type of thing where Windows 7 doesn't give it to you. It just kind of installs it by default. Server 2008 does not. So it's even more powerful than Windows 7 ever was. That's why it's my favorite version of Windows that's ever been there. So now we do our updates here. We'll go ahead and do a download and install updates. There's probably going to be quite a few here. So I'm going to fast forward through this section. Now, while it's checking for updates too, I am going to change some group policy like that Control-Delete and other things just to make this a little more seamless. So let's go into our gpedit.msc and make this more Windows 7-esque without the server security. So we're going to go ahead and jump into here. Windows settings. We're going to go into security settings, local policies, and then security options. And if you look here, do not require Control-Delete is set to disabled. We want to hit that as enabled, and that'll do it. Another good one to do is the event tracker. So in here, if we go to system under administrative templates, there should be a display event tracker right here. And we want to disable this. because it'll prompt you every time you go to reboot or shut down your PC and like, hey, what's this for? As with servers, you want to know that information. But in this case, we don't want to know that information as we want to emulate Windows 7. So we just set that. So we got our event tracker, we got our Control-Alt-Delete taken care of, and we can go one further if we want to do like auto login, which for this machine, you know what? I think I'll go ahead and show that. Let's go to run, and we'll go net pl whiz, and from here we can actually just say, hey, uncheck that, hit apply. It prompts you for the password, and we'll just go ahead, put that in, hit OK, and then OK. So now it'll auto log in. It no longer does Control-Delete. And then also we have no event tracker down here, which is great. Obviously, we need to fix some other stuff, such as you can see how it's kind of blocky and kind of old school looking. If we want kind of that newer portion, we can fix that as well. So we'll go into Properties and Advanced System Settings. And from here, the Performance. We'll go Settings. And then you have it all just right now turned off, so it's just as fast as it possibly can be. Now, if we want to do best appearance to make it look more Windows 7-esque, we'll go ahead and do that. That gives us a lot more effects and things of that nature. So, and we need that. So we'll go ahead and close this out. Another thing, probably why we're in advanced system settings too, is startup and recovery. I don't like to do kernel dumps, so we're going to go ahead and disable this. Obviously, you can leave that enabled if you're ever going to have troubleshooting with this, but I doubt you will. As I find the kernel dumps, hey, if it's going to blue screen, just blue screen already. So that's done. Remote access, I like to go ahead and enable RDP. Probably should do this section right here. It's a little more secure. So we'll go ahead and enable the more secure one. This sometimes can have issues when connecting from other clients. Actually, I do quite a bit of remote access from my Linux clients using Rumina. So I'm actually going to do the less secure version. But obviously, if you're concerned with security locally, or you're trying to like pass 3389, which is the RDP port, through your firewall, don't ever use less secure because someone will get access to your system. So be careful of this. However, since I already secure everything in my local network, I'm going to go ahead and put less secure. And I'm connecting from a Linux client, most instances. So that's done. We did not have very many updates. This was actually a pretty up-to-date ISO I have, as I still just love Windows Server 2008 R2. If I'm actually using a Windows version, typically it's going to be this. The only time I would use Windows 10 is if I needed like the Microsoft Store or something of that nature. I would probably do it then. So we already got enabled remote desktop. We can configure Windows Firewall. Obviously, this is something that you probably need to get in here if you have any programs or things that's accessing the outside world. It can be a headache. Don't ever turn Windows Firewall off. If you're going to do anything, bypass it. Should you run into problems, I say leave it on stock settings as is. So that should be pretty good. One more thing to check too is your Open Network and Sharing Center. Right now it's under a public network. We don't like that because it basically blocks all local traffic. So always set this to either work or home. So I'm going to put this as a home network, and we'll go ahead and hit close, because if it's set as private or public, a lot of systems can't access it, which is really bad. So we don't want that. This is actually a private network, not a public one. So we'll make sure to change that. We're done installing our updates. We're going to go ahead and restart now. This will go ahead and restart. Should go ahead and log into the system on reboot. So let's see what we get. Well, there you see it. Auto logged in. Everything was good. You saw the updates went through pretty darn quick, which is great. We got all our updates installed. Now, obviously, since this is Windows, we need to run those updates a couple times because it doesn't ever like to install all the updates. I love Windows. And we'll just look at our update history, just seeing what it does. Most of these are security updates, as there's not any features or any of that garbage that you get. And they're not installing telemetry and all these other features that they've just basically bloated up Windows 7 with and made it worthless, in my opinion. Now, there's still some other stuff in here that I probably would recommend doing. Adding roles, we need the desktop experience role just really to make this almost identical to Windows 7. And then we'll say, do not show this window again. I really like this checklist, how they put it together. It was very intuitive for Windows Server 2008. And honestly, the newer versions of Windows Server 2016 and 2019 all have this kind of checklist, which is great. So look at that. Our updates are finished. It finished a little servicing stack update. That was one thing that was missing. But as you see, it's updating only the security, which is great. This is what you want out of an actual operating system. It's not installing just a bunch of junk. So we'll go ahead and add our rules. I like to hit skip this page by default, and we'll go right into the rules. Now, obviously, most of this stuff is only for servers and things. I do use RDS quite a bit, so I actually will install that role. That allows me to go ahead and shoot Windows applications to other computers, as this is going to be more of a server role for me, but we're going to set it up like a desktop so we could game on it if we wanted. And that's pretty much it for RDS. I did a whole video, I think, on that as well, of piping that through using Windows applications on other PCs, whether it's Mac or Linux. You can push Windows applications to them and stream them. All right, moving through here, just gonna install these roles. Honestly, if you're doing just regular desktop stuff, you probably don't need to do this. However, just make sure you get this desktop experience role installed, because this is the only thing that kind of emulates that Windows 7 feel. It gives you a Windows 7 arrow and some translucent features, which are fantastic. So that's why I always get desktop experience. Hyper-V and RDS, I'm just going to be doing some other shenanigans that most people won't need. Now, the features we didn't go into, if you didn't add any roles like I did, obviously just click Add Features, and you can actually go in, make sure you have Desktop Experience installed. That's a real crucial one. And then you can see other features that you might want, like .NET 3.5. Almost all these you'd want. Because there's so many games and things that require 3.5 .NET, which would be kind of vital. So pretty much that's it. The .NET 3.5 and desktop experience are really the only things you really probably need. We're just going to go ahead and finish this out. Now, some other theming I recommend is probably coming into here. And now that we got desktop experience, we can do some cool stuff. So we can do just Windows 7, which would be kind of a good basic view. So you got the arrow theme, so you can see kind of the effect there. Now, obviously, since I'm doing remote access or out of band remote management, it is a little laggy. So obviously, if I was on the machine itself, this would be very seamless. And I can demonstrate this through a remote desktop as well. Now, one thing to finish this out is, of course, the infamous LCAR screensaver that I have been asked about a million times. So let's go ahead and launch into our, oh man, we still have Internet Explorer. So we have one more thing we need to do. So looking at the web browser in Server 2008, you'll notice that it has something called Enhanced Security Configuration. This is horrible. Launch into your server manager down here, and I like to just leave this tool because it's so useful. But if you look configure IE escape down here, this is actually something you just need to turn off. So it basically makes it to where you can actually use Internet Explorer to download things. Without it, it's kind of makes the browser worthless. And the whole purpose of that is if it was in a business, you don't want to be using an internet browser through your actual server. So let's, now we have this disabled, we'll go ahead and install some tools here, such as like Chrome and just some more modern day things. So we'll just do a basic install of this. All right, that's all good. And we'll launch into Chrome. We have a modern Chrome, so we can now easily go and download something called System 47 Mihu. This is the LCAR screensaver we've come to know and love. So I'm gonna download this guy. It's actually meant for Windows 9X NT 2000 and XP. That's how old this thing is. I still love it though. We'll just run this setup file. This will install the SCR. We can configure it as well, so there's a nice configuration utility. Let's go ahead and open up our panel, wait 1 minute. Got LCARs. It's exactly what we want. Also, we'll configure power management while we're in here. We want high performance, and we want to choose when to turn off the display. And we're going to go ahead and put this to never. So we got that in. We got our LCARs, and you can actually change some more stuff in here, like actual sound and all kinds of cool stuff. You can choose which screens you like, if there's a specific LCARs you want in here. Very cool little program. A lot of people always ask me about it. You can run this, if you're a Linux user, you can run this in Wine as well, because it's an old school SCR file that you can easily emulate. And we'll just say do not show again to finish this install out. As we've configured our roles, we've configured our features, the whole checklist has pretty much been finished now. All right, so we pretty much have finished customizing our Windows Server 2008 R2 to be exactly like Windows 7, but exactly like Windows 7 was back when it was really good. If you look here, even after all these updates, all these roles, and all this stuff we've installed on here, you'll still notice this is still a pretty lightweight install. 25 gigs with every driver installed, all the programs installed, all the updates ran, everything's perfectly up to date, looking great. So this is the power of using Windows Server 2008 R2 in 2020. For all you Windows 7 lovers out there that refuse to upgrade to Windows 10 because it's basically spyware, and for those that just basically don't want to switch to Linux because they just can't learn something new, or there's a specific Windows app that just won't work, well, here's another alternative for you. So there you go. That's my favorite version of Windows. This thing is still got just such a soft spot for me. I absolutely love Server 2008 R2, and some of that is because, you know, it's probably the prime of my career pushing all this out. I have an MCITP Enterprise Administrator. I have a bunch of certs over the 2008 server line, and God, it's just such a fantastic operating system. And it's kind of funny to hear me say that, as most people know I'm a Linux channel. I love Linux. I think Linux is the future, but it's still fun to reminisce and look at the past. And this one right here is still such a fantastic operating system, and I'm still going to run it on a little system. That what I built today is going to remain in my, you know, company for at least another year or two, as most of my Windows stuff I've moved over to Linux. But for those little Windows applications, I can still push through like the remote access and push it to my Linux desktop using this Server 2008 box. So I absolutely love this. But let me know your thoughts down in the comments section below. I'm always curious to see this, and I know a lot of people are going to probably give me some hate for saying 2008 R2, but God, I love this operating system. And with that, a big shout out to all my patrons. Without you, I couldn't make videos like this one, and I'll see you in the next video.